I grew up with dogs, and that is something I cherish always. Those memories that are made last forever. The interactions I have with my dogs are just phenomenal. But there are definitely some things I look back at my own childhood and regret doing as a kid. And so on this episode, we're going to be talking about everything kids and dogs. Let's get into it. All right, let's jump into this week's episode. So, like you guys heard in the intro, we're going to be talking about kids and dogs and trying to just make sure that what's happening in the household is appropriate and leading to an awesome relationship between your children and your dog. Because, unfortunately, we hear a lot of stories of maybe things that aren't so great from time to time. And so I feel like it's important to talk about it, educate people, and hopefully you guys learn some stuff. Now, this episode, in my opinion, is not just for people who have kids. It's for people who have dogs that are ever going to encounter kids. And I feel like that should be most people. Most dogs are going to, at some point in their life, encounter kids to some degree. And so having this knowledge, I feel like, is going to be really important and valuable to you. So even if you don't have kids, don't shut this one off. Definitely listen to this and hear what I have to say. Like always, guys, these episodes are brought to you by ondogtrainingacademy.com. It is going to be an online course website. You can check it out, onlinetrainingacademy.com. You can subscribe at the top right-hand side on the website, and you'll be getting updates on courses as they are launched and any information that comes out about that. So ondogtrainingacademy.com, guys, check it out. I think it's going to be a really neat thing that we're going to start doing here, and we're awfully excited. Also, if you jump onto Facebook and you search Learn, Laugh, Bark Podcast, you will find us there. And give that a like, follow it, whatever you want to do. Comment in there, please. I'm always looking for new ideas on what topics to talk about. I've got a big list going, and it always is growing. But it's always good to get some more input from you guys, the people listening, on what you want to hear. So jump on Facebook, search for the podcast, and you'll find it there. I will be connecting a link in the description. You can just go ahead and follow that as well to make it easy peasy. And of course, share this podcast with everybody you know, people you like, people you don't like. It doesn't really matter. I think everybody should be knowledgeable about dogs, dog training, dog living, dog life, whatever. Everything dogs, I think people should just be knowledgeable, and I think it's only going to help us as a whole if more people are educated about dogs, dog behavior, and everything that we talk about here. So definitely share this with your friends, family, strangers. Just walk up to someone on the street and go, hey, you should listen to this. Give it a shout. That would be much appreciated. So let's go ahead and dive right into this week's episode. So kids and dogs, awesome, awesome, awesome thing. I like the idea of it because personally I grew up with it. I grew up with dogs my entire life. Now, to be fair, my mom is a dog trainer, so I grew up with a dog trainer. And so I feel like that gives me a leg up, I suppose, in hopefully my mom communicating to me the appropriate ways to interact with dogs. But I was a kid, and there were things I would do that were probably against the rules. And that's just what it was. I just do them because I was a kid, and I was like, well, you know, what happens if I do this? And so I feel like it's important to talk about. So a couple things before we jump into some of the behaviors to avoid and a few other things along with that is anytime someone comes to us and says, hey, our dog bit our child, your child's always going to be a priority. Obviously, you know, yes, Dogs are like kids to a lot of people, including me. But when it comes to human life, that always takes the priority. And I understand that completely, and I believe that completely. But I will say, a lot of times, when your kid gets bit by a dog, it's not entirely the dog's fault. It's also not entirely the kid's fault. And sometimes it might be our fault as parents. Well, I'm not a parent, but parents, because maybe they didn't see something coming, they were reading the signs of the dog wrong, they weren't supervising, whatever. It sometimes falls on them. It's easy to push the blame to the dog because the dog is the one who did the crime, technically, but we need to take a step back and understand why this happened. But again, your child is a priority. I understand why people get mad at their dog when the dog bites or nips or does something to their child. 100% agree. But I want to sit and talk about today some behaviors for your kids. And, I will say you too. If you're listening to this, these behaviors happen more with kids. Like, kids do more of this, but I have seen so many adults do it too. I mean, let's be honest. I mean, I at times feel like I'm still a child. So, I mean, it wouldn't surprise me to see adults doing some of these things. And so if you're doing some of these things with your dog, just because you're not a kid and just because this episode is pushed to kids doesn't mean you shouldn't stop doing them probably immediately. That'd probably be a good idea. So the first one, and this one's kind of an easy one in my opinion, is don't hug or squeeze the dog. Now, I know there's some dogs who enjoy it, but we're going to get into body language here in a little bit and talk about maybe you're missing some signs that are telling you that their dog isn't enjoying something that you may think they are. Not all dogs like to be hugged. If you feel that dog pushing away from you, if that dog's doing some different things that we'll talk about later, a lot of dogs, hugging and squeezing isn't natural. You don't see wolves and stuff like that hugging each other. Yeah, they lay with each other, but they're not like hugging, squeezing, and holding them in. It's not a natural thing for dogs, and there's a lot of dogs who are uncomfortable with it. So that is one of the bigger areas where we see dogs nip children or get upset with children, is because the kids are hugging, squeezing, and I get why kids do it. They want to interact and love their dog, but there is sometimes a little too much love there. And they need to, and you'll hear this probably repeated a few different times, they need to respect the space of the dog and pet them, play with them, do things like that. But that squeezing stuff, it's just tough. And plus, usually when they're squeezing, they're putting their face right next to the dog's face. And it's just, if the kid isn't reading the right signs that the dog is putting out, it's leading to the kid getting bit in the face. And that's not good at all. The next one is don't tease your dog. Now, when I say tease, I don't mean like, have a toy and you're like making him miss the toy and then finally maybe you throw it for him, whatever. That's not teasing. What I mean for teasing is your dog is in their kennel and the kid's outside of the kennel taunting the dog, doing something that the dog can't really do anything for. Like I've seen people whose kids will drag like toys and things across the kennel like it's almost like a jail cell, just brum, brum, doing that. Or they'll have toys or different things and they'll squeak and the dog's getting super excited and super jacked up in their kennel, and it's frustrating for the dog because the dog can't get to what is being making them excited. So the teasing thing, we can't have that. What you're doing when you're teasing a dog like this is you're building this dog's anxiety to where when the dog is free and something similar to this happens, the dog is going to react just like it would in the kennel, except this time the kennel's not holding it back. So then what you get is a dog who just unleashes and jumps on the person, maybe play bites, whatever, but it's definitely not a good thing. So no teasing the dog. The running and shouting, I would tell your kids not to run and shout, but Jesus, they're kids, right? So what I say with the running and shouting is when that stuff is going on, this is where the parents really need to, all of this, the parents need to be watching their kids and making sure none of this is happening. But when your kids are really, really excited and running and shouting, don't let your dog run with them. For one, if you can help it, don't let them run with them. all that's going to do, watch two dogs run together. Their mouths are going crazy. They're biting at each other's necks, their legs, their feet, whatever. And it's just, it doesn't lead to anything good. The kid's going to end up getting a bite on their arm, or a tear in their shirt or pants or something, and it's not going to be a good experience. So the running and shouting, those are things that stimulate the dog. So what I would rather see happen is when the kids are wanting to run and play, either A, you put the dog away in a place that they're not going to completely have to deal with it, or B, you work on it. You have the dog on leash, and when the kids are running and playing, you're doing something with the dog, obedience, something with treats, high-value stuff, because remember, you're trying to be more important and valuable than the stimulation that's happening. So definitely do some stuff with that. The next one is don't... I'm reading off a list that I made here, so it's a little bit... I laugh at some of the stuff I write. Don't ride your dog like a pony. Now, this definitely should 100% be for kids. If you're a grown person riding a dog like a pony, I don't even know. I don't even know what to say about that. So, don't ride your dogs like a pony. For kids, yes, I know your dog is 150 pounds. That doesn't mean it wants or can handle having somebody on their back. This is not a horse. This is not natural for them. They're not designed and built to be ridden like this. So, I do not let the kids do any sort of stuff like this. And when I say ride them like a pony, this also means when the dog is laying there, kids should not be crawling up to the dog, climbing all over the dog, especially if the dog doesn't want it. We'll talk about those things here in a second. But if the dog doesn't want it, you shouldn't be letting your kid climb all over, do anything like that. Because what ends up happening is a dog's going to get hurt. Now, when a dog gets hurt, and I don't care if this is the friendliest dog you've ever owned in your entire life, when a dog gets hurt, the dog is going to react to that pain. Now, the reaction to that pain might be nipping or pushing away whatever it is that caused that pain, or it could be biting at the thing or at the location where the pain is coming from. So if you squeeze too hard, you grab the dog too hard, the dog then turns and bites your hand or bites towards the location of the pain. Well, you're going to get bit then. You're going to get bit. So watch the interactions in that sense. Kind of sidestepping or something similar to sort of what I'm talking about here is any grabbing and things. Young kids especially don't particularly know when they're petting dogs how to pet a dog, so they end up doing a lot of grabbing. And you can't see I'm sitting here grabbing my face so you can see what I'm talking about, but obviously that's not the case. But grabbing the dogs by the cheeks, grabbing their ears, grabbing their tail, grabbing their skin, especially super young kids, they do not know what a soft touch is and what a hard touch is. They just grab. So when they grab, it hurts, and when it hurts, the dog's going to react to it. And maybe your dog will be patient and understand and allow some of it to go. You might be sitting here right now going, well, my kids do this to my dog. My dog doesn't do anything. My dog doesn't bite. Your dog doesn't bite yet. I can promise you, if your kids are doing all these things, or if you're doing all these things, your dog is going to eventually get tired of it. And when I talk about some of the body language that you're seeing, that I'm going to go over, that could be displayed, you might start to go, oh crap, that is me, that is our dog. Which is okay, it's good to identify it and work on it, but it might be you. So be really careful with that. The next one then, the kind of last behaviors to avoid, or whatever you want to call it, that I would kind of mention here is never, eating and sleeping. These are things dogs don't really want help with. Your dog doesn't want help eating its food, nor should you feel obligated to put your hands or allow kids to put their hands in the dog's food. Again, I would not allow this if I had a kid, and I wouldn't allow it if I was a dog. If I'm eating food and someone puts their hand in my food, I'd be kind of pissed about that. Wouldn't you? You're hungry, you're waiting for your meal, they give you your meal, and then suddenly someone's trying to dick with you? I mean, to me, that would be something I don't think I would approve of if I was a dog. So definitely kind of keep that in mind. When they're eating, just let them eat. The only thing you're going to end up doing by messing with them and their food, and especially with kids and their food, is either A, you're going to get bit, or B, you're going to start creating resource guarding that is going to be extremely tough to get rid of. Resource guarding is no fun. Sleeping dogs. So here's my rule with sleeping dogs that I follow personally, and this should be the rules for kids too. If the dog is sleeping and isn't laying on me, I leave it alone. If I'm going to go over to wake it up because we're going to do something or something like that. But if the dog is especially if the dog comes into the room, sees you, and then goes and hops up on the couch on the other side or jumps on a chair, goes and lays in his bed away from you, that to me is a sign of, hey, I want to sleep. I'll sleep in the same room as you. Everything's fine. I just don't really want attention right now. If the dog comes up to you and jumps on your lap and curls up and falls asleep, that's a whole nother thing. That's the dog saying, I accept, being with you and you kind of petting me or whatever. Cool. But read the room. When the dog goes and says, I don't want to be messed with, especially with kids, don't let the kids run over and wake them up. It's going to piss the dog off, and the dog's going to go, all right, that's enough. I'm trying to sleep here. And especially what I've seen happen a lot is, so the dog will lay there, and the dog will get woken up by the kids. And so the dog, being as...
We'll be right back.
Hello, this is Panic.
And this is Sarah.
And you are listening to Music Elixir, a podcast between two friends
discussing their favorite Asian artists and music.
As patient as it can, as tolerating as it can, gets up and moves. Well, what's the kid do? The kid moves with the dog and continues to mess with the dog. And eventually it just leads to the dog saying, all right, enough's enough. I've thrown these signs out to you. You're not listening to me. I'm going to nip you. And if that doesn't work, I don't know. I'm going to increase that then. But that's then what happens. These things happen, and we need to make sure we're not causing it. So that's just a few of some behaviors that I don't recommend your kids doing with the dogs. What I want to talk about next then is just some of the body language sort of things that you should be looking for. The first thing, let's talk about something a little bit more positive right now. Let's talk about some good body language things that the dogs are doing. So you're looking at relaxed face while looking at you. So the dog, when I say relaxed face, it's just everything looks chilled, super calm, ears are calm, everything is calm. Calm isn't ears pinned back or lip licking or anything like that. It's just got this really relaxed, calm look. Closed mouth, slightly open, just kind of hanging out with you. People call it smiling. I don't know, but just hanging out, relaxed, normal ears. Kind of mentioned that. The normal tail position. This is a little tougher if the dog is laying down. If the dog has a little bit of a tail wag, okay. Especially if it's just a calm tail wag, cool. That's a nice, relaxed thing that I definitely want to see. A natural tail position. Nothing, I don't want the tail super jacked up high. I don't want the tail between their legs. And I don't want the tail doing intense, short, fast wags. To me, that's just a little bit too inappropriate and could lead to some overstimulation. And then just an overall kind of relaxed body. You kind of can tell when your dog is just relaxed and kind of cool with stuff. But sometimes there's some things, some body language things that dogs are throwing out that we don't notice that maybe we should start noticing. The first one is their eyes. Look at their eyes. What are their eyes doing? What are their pupils doing? If you can see them, what are their pupils doing? Are they wide? Are their eyes wide? Are their pupils dilated? That's a sign of very unhappiness. I've had dogs give me this look before. It was a resource guarding case, and shortly after I saw those pupils dilate, the dog attacked me. And so Pupil dilation to me is like dogs getting in the zone. Here comes whatever you want to call it, beast mode, mean mode, whatever you want to call it. The dog is getting upset, and something's going to happen here. We need to intervene right away. In the next one then, when it comes to eyes, is like intense staring. Like, dogs looking at you is a really natural thing. There's a lot of dogs who like to make eye contact. There's excited eye contact, like, oh, we're working, I'm giving you a treat or something like that. There's like relaxed, just like almost like an I love you kind of eye contact where the dog is just kind of looking at you. But if those eyes are wide and they have pupils are dilated, whatever, and they're just locked in staring at you or your kid, in this instance, or your kid, that is a red flag to me to go, okay, God, I need to back up. We need to stop. The lips pulling back or lip licking, to me, lip licking is such a missed thing. Dogs who are sitting there licking lips are showing a stress big time. If they're just doing a lot of lip licking as your kid or whatever is interacting with the dog, they're saying, I am not happy with this. I am not happy with this. And so you need to be aware of that. Oh, dog's doing that. They're not happy. We need to kind of pull the kid back and be like, hey, we need to stop doing whatever it is the kid is doing. Exaggerated yawning. Some people don't know that yawning is a stress response. It's saying, I'm really stressed in this situation. I don't like this. Yawning is not tired always. Yawning is definitely stress. So if you see your dog doing a lot of excess yawning in different situations, see what's going on and be like, maybe this is something we need to tamper back on. Growling. Obviously, growling is definitely a sign that your dog is not happy. What I will say to growling, just because I think it is something that is widely seen, is if your dog growls, I personally do not correct a dog who growls. I'll correct a dog if they lunge or do any bad, anything like that, but I don't correct a dog who growls, and here's why. Growling is a warning. Just like lip licking, yawning, all these things. These are signals that they are uncomfortable or stressed. If we start correcting growling without working on the actual cause of this growl or the stress, then what we do is we effectively get rid of the growl. Cool, dog doesn't growl anymore. That doesn't mean we got rid of the emotion. It just means we got rid of the signal. If we get rid of the signal now, and we get these cases a lot where the person will say, I didn't see it coming. The dog went from 0 to 60 and it just, bam, bit me. I didn't see it coming. Well, why was it? For one, I'm sure something was going on. The dog was indicating it was going to happen. But maybe it was because you corrected growling. You effectively killed the one big main thing that is a huge indicator to you that your dog is mad or not happy or stressed. So don't correct growling. Understand why the dog is growling and come up with a plan to work on either yourself or your kid or work on the dog. It always depends why the dog is growling. Ears pinned back is another one. So those ears being pinned all the way back, yeah, it can be a submissive thing and it can be something that's okay sometimes. But those ears pinned back a lot of times mean that they're a little stressed, they're uncomfortable. Tail tucked is always an easy one. That one kind of, it's pretty common. If you see that dog's tail tucked, it just means they're unhappy. But a stiff tail, that rigid wagging, like I mentioned up above a little bit ago, that rigid wagging, and then throwing in like the body language that we're not liking, those type of things are signs that they're not happy. Pacing is definitely something that the dogs that are a little stressed will do. Hair raising to me can mean so many different things. Hair raise is a stimulation. So the dog could be negatively stimulated, meaning stressed, worried, angry. Dog could be a positively stimulated, excited, sees new friends, new smells. There's something going on that's getting the dog excited. But to me, if the kid's interacting with the dog and I see the hair go up, immediately we're done. We are not going to, whatever the kid is doing, I'm identifying it and being like, dog doesn't like this, we're going to do something else. Just to kind of make sure that everything's going to be okay. And then the last two parts is just looking at the dog's body as a whole. What is your dog doing? So a positive body language stuff. We talked about just an overall relaxed body. But when you're looking at a dog and their body, when it comes to being uncomfortable, you're looking for like stiffness. The dog is super tense, super stiff, side-eyeing the person, like not wanting to move a lot. Maybe your dog's afraid, so they're hunched up a little bit. They're cowering down. They're showing that they're not happy. Or the dog's rolling over. And yeah, sometimes rolling over definitely can be belly rubs and all of that. You have to identify these different things and kind of understand. But sometimes the rolling over can be a submissive thing, especially if it's accompanied by like urination or anything like that. We just have to be careful. So with that being said then, now that we've talked about things to avoid and we've talked about the body language part, I want to jump in real quick. I know we're getting a little bit late into the podcast here, or the episode here, but I wanted to talk real quick about things kids can do with dogs, because I think sometimes we forget about that stuff. It's always good. It's always easy to see things. The kids doing this, the dog don't do that. But what can they do? Well, kids and dogs. So kids can get frustrated really easy. Young kids, when they get frustrated, can end up hitting a dog, smacking dogs, kicking dogs. So obviously we're doing this supervised if you don't think the kid can handle a little bit of frustration. What I always suggest to parents is the parents should be doing basically all the training with the dog early on to teach the dog. And this is with kids who you don't think can teach the dog appropriately. You teach the dog to sit, you teach the dog to down and the come and all that stuff, and then you hand over some treats and some stuff, and you tell the kid to do it. And then the kid starts to do it. Because what really motivates kids, and this could be sports, this could be fishing, this could be anything, but what motivates kids is success and positive outcomes. So if the kid's telling the dog to sit and the dog doesn't sit because it doesn't know sit, the kid's going to be like, this is stupid, I don't want to do this anymore, I'm going to go do something else. And then they start to lose that relationship with the dog, or the building of a relationship with the dog. But if you teach your kid, or if you teach the dog how to do something, and then the kid then can go in and get the dog to do it, to me that's super, 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 super awesome. And it just helps that relationship. Now the dog's like, oh, you tell me to do this stuff too. I know what this is, and I do it, and I get treats. It's awesome. The other thing is they can do appropriate play games. So we talked about not chasing, or not running around. I also don't like the kids chasing the dogs, and I'm not a huge fan of having the dogs chase the kids unless they have a big giant toy in their hand where the kid can have it and say, here, this is what you bite on. Anytime kids and dogs are playing together, I try to have a toy in the dog's mouth, and if the dog drops it, toy goes back in the mouth, because I want the dog to be able to chew and chomp on something if they get excited enough, but not direct it to the kids if we can help it. So having that stuff, doing that stuff with them. Other things that kids can do is feeding them. Make them do something. So we follow a philosophy that's like nothing in life is free, where dogs have to work for stuff. Well, that's what you do with your kid. So you'd have your kid maybe have the dog sit before they feed him. Because if the dog goes, hey, you're a feeder, you feed me, you're a resource. That means you're more valuable. If you're more valuable, they start to see you as more of a more important than just a litter mate. And a lot of times kids and dogs are seen more as equals. And if you start having, hey, this kid gets me food, suddenly the kid has a little bit more value and starts to work its way up the totem pole in the dog's eyes. So I think that's a really good thing, feeding. Also adding control things. So if the dog wants to be pet by the kid, have the kid tell the dog to sit. Something really easy, but have the dog sit. If the dog wants to go outside, same thing, have them sit. Come out of their kennel, have them sit. But you're having the kid direct the dog on what to do, and then when the dog does it, the dog gets rewarded with something great. Food, getting let outside, getting let out of its kennel, whatever. But that stuff I think is really important. And then having to me, this is probably, playing is important, training is important, all these different things I think are important when it comes to bonding with the dog. But honestly, I think sometimes the biggest one is just when the dog comes up to you and lays down with you, spend that time with the dog calm. Kids love to play, kids love to do stuff with the dog, but sometimes we need that calm bonding. And unfortunately, sometimes I think kids really try to force it, and by forcing these interactions, it actually pushes the dogs away. So the more the kid tries to force snuggling with the dog goes, you know what, I don't want this. And then when the dog maybe does want it, it seeks out somebody else, or it just goes off on its own. So I think kind of just having these calm down times where you're just hanging out, and I think the more you do training-wise and everything with the dog, and more of these positive interactions you have with the dog, I think in the end the dog wants and yearns to have that physical contact and everything with you and your kid. So hopefully this was helpful for everybody. I want your kids and your dogs to have an awesome bond and have an awesome relationship, and sometimes they can get frayed through frustration, stress, and just bad behavior. So hopefully this episode kind of helped walk you through some of the things to avoid, some of the things to do, and just how to just read a dog's body and understand that the dog's not a pony. Not a pony. They might look like it. Some dogs are the size of ponies. But they are not a pony. They are not to be ridden. So that is it, guys. Hopefully you learned some stuff here. Hopefully you go check out our website, ondogtrainingacademy.com. Get on our email list. I promise we will not flood you with tons of emails. We don't like it. We don't want to pass it on to you guys either. So definitely give that a check out. Also jump on and look for us on Facebook, because that is going to be, for now, the platform we are using to communicate with you guys, because you guys are the reason I do this. So please get on there. Please comment. Let's build this thing up. Let's have this fun little community where we can educate people, share experiences, come up with cool topics, and just have fun. This is the point of the podcast, is to be fun, educational, and just be a good time. So thank you guys for listening to me this week. And like always, we'll see you next time.